Hi, I'm Mike,
And I'm Elise,
host of Crackin' One Open with Mike and Elise.
a podcast about brews, news, and pop culture reviews.
Every Friday, we choose a new craft beer from a different brewery and talk about
The history of the beer,
what's in it,
how it was made,
the history of the brewery.
along with tasting notes and more fun facts.
After that, come chill with us as we bring you the latest in pop culture news and reviews.
So check out Kraken When Open, part of the Forgotten Entertainment family.
Another season of Forgotten Horror has come to an end, but as Field paraphrases Al Pacino from Scent of a Woman,
"We're just getting warmed up!"
spend the next few months with Forgotten Cinema as Season 7 kicks off with movies from all across the decades. We jump to the 70s to talk about The Front Page, starring Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau.
We dive into the 80s with Michael Mann's Thief and the Dennis Quaid Meg Ryan thriller DOA, and then slice into Butler's childhood years, the 90s, with The Last Samurai and The Negotiator.
That's right, Field. You're old. So very, very old.
Shut up, Butler.
Forgotten Cinema, part of the Forgotten Entertainment family.
Hi, I'm Mike Field.
I'm Pat Whalen,
Pat is a lifelong comic book geek,
and Mike is a filmmaker and storyteller.
so naturally, a bulk of our conversations surround the world of the Marvel movies. Some consider the MCU one of the greatest achievements in modern-day filmmaking, and others just think they're comic book movies. Each episode will tackle one film and discuss the differences between the comic book and what's on screen. We'll explore the growth of the Marvel Cinematic Universe from its inception to present day and beyond, and have a little fun along the way. You may not have asked for it, you certainly don't need it, but you'll be happy we're here. We think. This is yet another MCU podcast. We're at the end of phase 2, Pat,
Here we go.
with a likely ender, a likely movie to end the phase. And that, of course, is Ant-Man.
a likely?
Well, that's I'm saying that sarcastically. If
Okay.
that doesn't come through the microphone, I apologize. So yes, Ant-Man. We are doing Ant-Man.
We have to do Ant-Man. We're going in order.
Right. No surprises here. You knew where we were headed. So let's get into the movie. As you know, we like to do here, movie versus comics, and the movie within the MCU itself. So Ant-Man came out on July 17th, 2015. It's a runtime of 117 minutes. It's shocker, PG-13. Production budget of 130 million, a little bit lower than the other movies. Obviously lower than the Avengers, the Ultron movie, but a little bit lower than the other ones,
Yeah.
130. Opening weekend, it did 57 million, domestic 180, and then worldwide 519 million. So a hit, but not the hit they're used to.
Right. And I think coming off of the Avengers with everybody in it, which was a little disappointing.
True.
Thor, which was a little disappointing. And then having a character that nobody really knew, or even in the comics, he doesn't probably get as much credit as he deserves. So this was a tough one, I think, for Marvel to release.
Well, I would imagine that their expectations weren't huge.
Right.
So they probably were maybe pleasantly surprised. I don't know. I don't want to get
It got a
into minds.
sequel. I mean,
Well, I mean, it's always going to get a sequel.
yeah, that's true.
All right, so we do have some new players, and I'll get to them, but let's just get to the real quick who directed this, and that was Peyton Reed. Obviously, I'm pretty sure everyone knows the whole Edgar Wright story, but we can get into it, after we go through this. Edgar Wright has the screenplay story credit along with Joe Cornish, and also you have Paul Rudd and Adam McKay doing a polish, which is a little interesting, I thought. Cinematography by Russell Carpenter, who none of these people never return. I was looking for I usually like to try to give they've done this Marvel movie.
They're part of the family.
No, I know Peyton Reed comes back for Ant-Man and the Wasp,
Yep.
but I'm pretty sure he's going to do the third one. Composer Christoph Beck did Ant-Man and the Wasp after this, and he's doing WandaVision.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that.
Good for him.
We all know who produced these, Kevin Feige, and then the only two editors, Colby Parker Jr., who I don't think I saw anywhere else in the Marvel universe, and then Dan Lebental. Apologize if I said that wrong. He did Iron Man. So yeah,
Okay.
and then. Maybe I missed some of these other ones appearing later on, but no, this is it. But new players now to the Marvel world.
We do.
You have Paul Rudd as Scott Lang.
Yep.
Michael Douglas as the Hank Pym character, which we talked about last week.
Yes,
Last
in
episode.
Ultron. And funny story about that is
Michael Douglas story? Interesting.
well, a kind of friendly Michael Douglas story. He did this movie so that his kids, I think they were in their early teens, could go and see a movie that he was in, because the rest of his movies are basically rated R.
Of course. That's why we like Michael Douglas. Yeah. But honestly, I assume that a lot of people do a lot when you see somebody in a movie they're like, why would you do this kids movie? there's why they're
Right.
doing that movie. Money and for the children
For
or
the
for
children.
grandchildren. And that's fine.
Robert Downey Jr. did Dr. Doolittle.
I've watched Doolittle. Yeah. No.
God bless you.
Tough. All right. Evangeline Lilly is Hope Van Dyne, who will later become the Wasp. I kept saying Wasp Woman back like 4 years ago. I don't know. I kept just saying Ant-Man and the Wasp Woman. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right. Corey Stall is Darren Cross. He's the baddie in this movie. Bobby Cannavale plays Paxton. Judy Greer is Maggie Lang. Lang is Judy is the ex-wife of Scott. Bobby is her new husband. Married? Boyfriend,
I don't
husband.
remember.
They're together.
There's a dynamic there, and it's a nice
Yeah.
dynamic, so I like it.
Well, I'm a big Cannavale fan. I
So am I.
love Bobby Cannavale. If you have not seen Boardwalk Empire, his season is fantastic, and he is fantastic in that season. But regardless, Michael Pena as Luis, Anthony Mackie as Falcon. We see Falcon again
we get Falcon.
in the worst way, like looking like terrible in terms of just he's like such the foil in this movie. I feel so bad.
Yeah.
He's you know what I mean? Like he was like bad.
He's in this movie. He was super great in Winter Soldier, and then he comes into this one. He gets his butt kicked by Ant-Man.
I hope they paid him a lot. And then you had some other returning characters that actually I had not you had not seen John Slattery as Howard Stark since Iron Man 2, which right. So he comes back as Howard Stark, as Tony Stark's dad. You had Martin Donovan as Mitchell Carson. This is his first one, right?
As far as I can tell, yeah, and he never shows up again.
Okay, because we never see him after that.
I looked him up. I couldn't find him in anything.
Mhm.
I was like, because he mentions, and we'll get into it, but he mentions that he's part of Hydra.
Right.
And then, because the last thing we had seen of Hydra was in the end of Winter Soldier and then the early parts of Ultron, where it looked like they kind of broke down the remaining factions of Hydra. And then all of a sudden he's here. And so maybe there might be some timeline things going on, but they do mention the attack on Sokovia. So this is post Ultron.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. And maybe I went to see if maybe he made an appearance in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because I know they had been dealing with Hydra even after Winter Soldier, but nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I thought so too. I thought he was set up as a bad guy. And I'm like, he must be within the series.
Yeah.
And I guess they never used him.
Because he enters the scene, the 1980s scene early on, like we should know who he is.
I wonder if he would have been the character that Robert Redford plays in Winter Soldier if Redford said no.
That's fair.
Because you don't realize he's bad.
Right.
I wonder.
You don't realize he's bad in this movie, but then you can't add him to the later scenes.
Right. So I wonder. And then, of course, Pat's screen crush, Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter.
Yes. Good to see her again.
Which I got to ask you. I don't understand why she's in that scene. I understand why you're in the Triskelion, right? Is that how you say it?
Triskelion, yeah.
And because they're just building, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all there. And I get all that because then you realize, because I asked last episode about like, where the heck is Hank Pym? And now you see what happens to Hank Pym, which I should say the de-aging on Michael Douglas in this movie is awesome. Like I was like, that's how he looked. It was fantastic.
Prepping for this episode, I went back and watched Basic Instinct. Which does not work.
Why?
But
Of all the Michael Douglas movies to watch, that's the one I know why you watched that. Shame on you.
No.
Shame on you.
It's a great noir crime thriller.
So all the kids out there that love Marvel movies, don't watch Basic Instinct.
This is true. But you get to see a young Michael Douglas.
Well, you get to see young Michael Douglas and everything and all this tons of stuff.
Didn't want to watch Wall Street.
So Wall Street Money Never Sleeps. Did you see that one, the sequel?
Yeah, I own that. I own that
you
Blu-ray.
Own that? Interesting.
Hollywood Video is going out of business.
What are video stores? You've lost half the audience already.
Let's just cut out this entire segment and go back to the de-aging on Michael Douglas.
It's awesome.
Yes, it is.
All right. So I asked last week or our last episode that, all I keep reading in the comics is Hank Pym this, Hank Pym, Howard Stark. I just always hear about him and he hasn't been in any of these Marvel movies since this 12th movie. And now he shows up and then you get an explanation why you haven't seen him for a while.
Does it work for you?
I guess. I understand that you can't have two, like Howard Stark and Hank Pym.
Right.
That's a whole.
Or Howard Stark and Tony Stark. I'm sorry, Hank Pym and Tony Stark. Yeah, but okay, let me ask you, let me rephrase it this way, because you've looked into this for this podcast. When you went in to watch Ant-Man 5 years ago when it came out,
right?
Did you know who Hank Pym was?
No.
Did you know he should have been in the movie?
No.
Or should have been part of the Avengers?
No.
So
maybe like somebody mentioned it, but it really didn't. Not like the way that we're talking about it. No.
So does it work not knowing who he is?
I think it's nice that they maybe bring back somebody that you've heard about in the comics, or I'm sure that for like you love Marvel comics and you've read them, and you haven't for all these movies, for 11 movies, you have not even heard of him. And then he finally shows up. I think that's a better question for you.
We're going to get to why Hank Pym is problematic.
Okay.
And I think keeping him off the board for as long as they did was actually pretty useful.
I know what you're referring to.
Yeah.
We can
talk
get
about
to
it.
that. That's fine. But all right. So this movie is basically an origin story of sorts. When I had watched this movie, I had texted Pat because, we're not watching it together. And I mentioned to him that there's no action in the first hour, like no big action scenes in the first hour of the movie. And I don't know if that's a problem or not. I know because every time I know what you're going to say. It's a heist film. It's a heist film. Yeah. The heist is not great. The heist is not even interesting.
No, the performance of the heist isn't good. The building the team and doing everything together. But what I take out of this one is it's, a little bit more of a family dynamic film than we've seen in other ones. You get the interaction between Scott and his ex-wife and her husband, boyfriend, whatever he is, whatever Bobby Cannavale is.
Her man.
Her man. His daughter.
Yep.
And then, seeing the relationship between Hank and Hope too. Coming off of Ultron, and I think watching this in context both separately and then coming off of Ultron, it works as a nice palate cleanser coming off of the last movie. It's not as big and bombastic. It's a small little corporate espionage, essentially, event that they deal with. And I like that lower stakes aspect of this film. I like the character work that everybody puts in. I love the character of Luis. I think Paul Rudd does a really good job. Corey Stall was, he fed right. He's like, I'm the villain of this movie.
Right.
He doesn't hide it. He's the villain from, the first scene he's in.
Right.
And so it was fun to watch that.
His villainy is, it's not well thought out.
Yeah, as a villain, he's not a well thought out.
Correct. Yeah. Like he kills that dude in the bathroom.
Right, and then everybody's gonna be like, "Where'd that dude go?"
Right. Like he's just like, "Hey, that guy just went in the bathroom. I'm waiting for him. We gotta go lunch." Like, I don't know what happened.
Oh, you didn't see him in there? It's like,
don't worry about it.
Were...
Yeah. So when I talk about the heist not being interesting, like I'm comparing it to like Ocean's 11.
Yes.
Like that's a heist. The whole movie is about pulling off the one giant heist. This movie is an origin story, and then we also have to steal, like as Hank Pym tells you, I want you to break into somebody and steal some shit.
Then he has to break into Howard Stark's storage facility, Avengers Mansion, and you never actually see him take the thing. See, that's when they put the fight in there.
That felt added on.
Yes,
you know what I mean. Like, okay, I need you to go here to do this. It was almost like, okay, we have to tie this into everything into the MCU. That felt added on.
Because you referred to Ocean's 11. If they made it like that Ocean's 11 scene where they break into that building to steal the power generator,
right?
EMP device, whatever it was, one of the guys breaks his ankle or his hand.
They have the wide shot and you just see,
you see everything going on. Yeah. That would have been a better like first attempt at a heist than what we see with the, you're right. The fight with Anthony Mackie is a little off and it doesn't really make sense.
I'm curious, like the conversations they had with Mackie in terms of, okay, so listen, you're going to be an Ant-Man, but you're going to get the crap kicked out of you.
Yeah, but he went with it. Like,
no, I get that. You're not going to say no.
I know, but I
understand
he was enjoyable in the scene. He's always enjoyable.
Well, obviously, he still could not like it. Jeremy Renner didn't like being controlled in Thor, I'm sorry, in Avengers, but he did it. So I get it. You're professionals. I understand. It's just really tough to see, like, you don't want to see your hero or one of the heroes in the previous movies come into this movie and be like, the foil, like I said, or be like somebody that's just beat upon by little Ant-Man kind of deal.
But when we do talk about fight scenes, one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is that end fight scene between Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket when they're in the bedroom and they're on the toy table.
Oh yeah, that's good.
I think that was, especially when you pan out and you just see kind of the laser beam shooting out of nowhere.
Yeah,
I really like that scale that they show.
I like the fight scene. I'm talking about the first hour.
I know.
Yeah, because you have. I'm trying to think what they use as their like when he breaks into Pym's mansion or house, which is the Charmed house. Did you notice that?
No, I've never watched Charmed.
Oh, I didn't either. But I know it's the Charmed house. So when they break, or at least the outside, when he breaks in, that's okay. That's an okay scene, but that's not a big action set piece.
No, but it's showing Scott's
No, I got you.
abilities.
Which is not Paul Rudd. Is obviously somebody who knows.
Oh, the parkour over the wall. Yeah, that's not Paul Rudd.
And then you have, when he's being trained by Hope and she's training him how to fight, all that stuff. And then he's trying to learn to become Ant-Man. Again, like it's this origin stuff. But even in, like, if we compare it to Iron Man, and because that's an origin movie, that's got more.
Oh, yeah. Because it opens with the attack.
Right.
And then it has him building the Iron Man suit, flying around for a bit, and then he flies to the...
Well, he fights his way out when he builds the suit.
Right, he fights his way out. Then when he comes home, he builds the new suit. Then he flies over to Middle Eastern country, blows up a couple terrorist groups.
Yep.
And then you have the scene... Well, immediately afterwards, you have the scene with him in the Air Force flying next to each other.
Yep.
And then I don't think you have a scene after that, though, until the fight with...
Well, I think I don't know if we mentioned it in the Iron Man episode, but if the third act falls apart.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, okay, now it's time for him to fight the big bad guy, which is Jeff Bridges, and here we go.
And you get the same thing here. I really like the visuals in this, especially that last fight scene, but it is that same thing. It's like, time to fight your counterpart.
Yeah.
Everybody's, that's the scene.
Yeah. There's little things that happen at the end of this movie in terms of like what they're trying to do. We talk about Martin Donovan's character, Mitchell Carson.
Yep.
When he gets off the helicopter, so the helicopter lands and they get off because, and they have this like villain shot and it's like, we're businessmen. We're here to make a deal. Like, okay. And then when Cross leaves, he takes the helicopter.
Yeah.
So
the guy doesn't question. It's like, where'd my other guys go?
So there's stuff like that, and then they talk about within this movie that Cross is going crazy, quote unquote. Because his brain levels are being affected
by his particles.
But he's never practiced the particle. He's never used the particles on himself. So I don't understand. He doesn't have the helmet. I don't understand that.
Yeah. That's why I wish they just said he was a maniacal, crazy person.
Right. He's never used, like, there's no idea that he's ever used the suit. He puts the suit on at the end, the yellow jacket suit.
Yep.
But you've never, like, he's never been trying to experiment on himself. You've never
as far as
seen
we can
that.
tell. Yeah.
Right.
It's not like a Green Goblin situation from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
Right.
He did the thing himself, goes crazy afterwards.
I think that's a very good analogy because it's very similar.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, he never does it on himself. If they just made him this power mad, even kind of like an Obadiah Stane stand-in type of person. Stane was he was malicious. He wanted power. He felt wrongfully like kicked out of the company.
Right.
Okay. Just turn that into Darren Cross.
Yeah.
There is some talk about like some stuff that makes people go crazy with these Pym particles and stuff that has happened in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
So that almost sounded like more of a reference and an Easter egg than an actual plot point.
But it's used as a plot point.
And
maybe that has something to do also with the fact that there's 5 different writers on this movie. And why don't you, I don't know if you want to get into just kind of like the Edgar Wright stuff and in terms of the movie. And if for some people that don't know.
So I don't think we could talk about this movie without touching on Edgar Wright, but this was he started working on this back in like 2003.
Right.
If not even before then.
He and to the point where he asked them not to use Ant-Man or Wasp in any of the movies ahead of time.
His movie was going to be an origin story.
Right.
So, back 2000, 2003, this was before the MCU, the Marvel Studios proper, was formed. So this was actually going to be one of those like first 3 movies. It was going to be Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Ant-Man. For whatever reason, the Ant-Man movie kept getting delayed. There were scripts. Wright went on to do other things, Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead,
right,
at World's End. So he wanted to tell this origin story of Hank Pym.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a while, and we'll go into it, but decided to turn it into an origin story for Scott Lang, but keep that piece of Hank Pym in there, which we see in here. I think he wanted to open it too with a Hank Pym, Janet Van Dyne, Ant-Man Wasp action scene.
Sure.
Which we see that later on in the movie. They shift some stuff around.
Conveniently not letting Wasp say anything so that we don't know.
Right.
So that when they
there's a picture of her. There's a picture of her later on with a hat covering her face. We're like, yep, that's the trick. So they go get Michelle Pfeiffer's in
an Ant-Man Wasp
in this sequel. Wright stayed on this project all the way through 2014. He cast most of the main players. So it was Douglas, Paul Rudd. They even had Corey Stall. they were going to have Corey Stoll play Darren Cross. Darren Cross was going to end up being a character called like Nano Warrior or something.
Right. I have
Who
that. Yeah.
That's not a Marvel character.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's just a made up name. Cause you sent that to me. I'm like, I don't have any, like there's Nano, who I believe is a DC character. There's Warrior, who's been a kind of character in both ones. It's just a, simple name, but there's no Nano Warrior. And so I wanted to dive into what that was, but yeah, eventually they just Wright and Feige and the Marvel Studios, they went their own separate ways and
I think
claimed creative differences.
The relationship fell apart when Disney bought Marvel. I think that was when and they probably were just like, no, you need to follow along the lines of what we want to do here. And he probably was like, forget it. And with all due respect to Peyton Reed, I think everyone would like to see
I think you see most of Wright's fingerprints over this anyway, because he still gets the writing credit. His writing partner still gets the credit. I think the way Luis tells stories is right from.
You don't think that's Michael Pena?
I think it's Michael Pena, but I think they maybe brought Michael Pena in to fit Wright's script.
Maybe. I think where I would have liked to have seen Wright's fingerprints is the action scenes. And I'm thinking of his Baby Driver. That's all I'm thinking about right now is his stuff in Baby Driver.
He did Scott Pilgrim.
Like his action stuff is really good. Even Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz is awesome.
Yeah.
Because he's mimicking 80s action movies in that movies, and he's doing it as they always well. So his action stuff I would have liked to have seen. And I want to say that maybe my biggest issue, which is there's nothing going on in the first hour, probably would have been a little bit more interesting with his hand. But that I don't want to, No,
I think that's fair. I think we'd probably get more of a Ocean's 11 style with a right twist on it for the heist scenes too.
But you know what? That's a movie that didn't happen.
I think Peyton Reed did an admirable job with this. I think he picked up, he came on very last minute.
See, I don't know if I like this movie. Like, I like it. Like, I think I sent you the text where it was like angel food cake. It's sugary, but when you eat it, it's just air. Like, okay, I saw Ant-Man. Oh, what's going on? What about the lunch?
I like it. I like the family dynamic. I like the character work in this one.
See, I think I would like more of. Pym makes a comment in this movie how Hope was the deciding vote to kick him out of Pym Tech.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't, and you get that idea that there is a strained relationship between the two. But I want a little bit more. I like, where she wants to know, you keep telling me that how my mother died. Like, that stuff is good. That scene's good, but you're obviously lying to me. And then he finally tells her. To Paul Rudd's credit, he takes it, and Paul Rudd is a very good dramatic actor. He just doesn't do a lot of dramatic roles, but when he does, if you've ever seen him and stuff, he's really good. And he's able to do a drama, and then he's able to come across like he is awesome in The Shape of Things. If you've ever seen The Shape of Things with Neil LaBute, but he's able to do a movie like that. And there's other dramatic roles that he's done. And he's able to do a movie like Anchorman and do them equally well.
Oh, yeah.
So to his credit, in here, he's able to tone back the Anchorman stuff. Like, he's funny, he's witty and charming, but he's also, there's real moments there with his child and with his ex-wife and all that stuff. So I like him in this. I think maybe I want a little bit more between the father and daughter, Hope and Hank.
Yeah. These characters feel a little bit more real than we've gotten in other movies.
With Ultron, you there's nothing you can.
Yeah, not even Ultron, grandiose, but with even Tony Stark, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. That's what he lives in a mansion in Malibu. Then you go to Captain America. He's this morally good guy,
but he's
super strong. Now he's super powerful. You go to Thor. He's a space Viking. Now you just have this guy that's trying to struggle to get by. Scott Lang's a regular guy. He goes to his ex-wife's house. He goes to see his daughter. Like, that's his day to day.
Right.
And he's not going to a board meeting. He's not working for a secret government agency. This is his life.
It's like Hawkeye got his own movie, because we talked about Hawkeye last episode about being like the audience, like somebody that we can relate to. Yeah. No, I can understand that. Scott Lang has definitely I don't want to say Batman, but that idea how Batman just has gadgets. Scott Lang has the suit, and he's not super powerful. He's not like somebody who he can get hurt, because he can definitely get hurt when he's not small.
Right.
So no, I agree with that. And that's fine. That works. That works for me. And I don't mind a kind of separate standalone movie that within the universe that kind of squeezes it in. And we'll get to the MCU stuff a little later. But why don't we dive into the differences?
Let's go to the comics.
Yeah. And I don't know where you want to go with in terms of like what I peppered you with questions.
You did, but maybe let's just give an overview of all the Ant-Men. There's been several.
Oh boy. All right. Story time.
So there were three key Ant-Man, whatever. So the first
an
one,
Ant-Woman?
Huh?
Has there ever been an Ant-Woman?
No, because that's usually
Wasp is always the woman.
The Wasp character, a couple other characters.
Interesting.
So one first thing I'm going to kind of cut out of the way is the irredeemable Ant-Man. He's this character named Eric O'Grady. He was a kind of low-level shield grunt type of maintenance guy.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up stealing one of Pym's Ant-Man suits, and part of it was to go and like chase girls. The Avengers have tried to push him to do better, but that's why like he gets the title the irredeemable Ant-Man. Can he do better? He's not in this one, thank God.
Okay.
Then you have Hank Pym and Scott Lang. Hank Pym was the original Ant-Man. He debuted back, in the 1960s by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Larry Lieber and those guys. First in Tales to Astonish, which I think they make an Easter egg.
Darren Cross says that joke, yeah.
And so Hank Pym has assumed dozens of identities. Giant Man, Goliath, both of which when he can change his size, to make him bigger. Yellow Jacket, and he's even taken on the name the Wasp for a time. He changes his identity like 5 times in the first 9 years of his existence. From, he's Ant-Man, and part of that was because the writers probably weren't doing a great job with him. And what I like about this movie is they could show the perspective of him being smaller. We've learned our lessons from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and how to like film to that perspective, except now in CGI, and, make him look small in the grass. In the comics and the original ones, they just kind of drew him there, and he just looked like another blank generic superhero. Like his costume wasn't anything spectacular. He didn't have a lot going on. So what they decided to do was change up his name, change up his abilities, but then they started to tweak his personality.
Okay.
And that's where we run into issues with Hank Pym. And so one of his costume changes was to the Yellow Jacket costume. Was vastly different than what we see in the movies, and what we see in the movies more comes from more recent interpretations of the character. So during an experiment, Hank inhales some dangerous chemicals, and he has this like switch in his brain where he becomes cockier, a little smoother, a little bit more like he's in charge.
Right.
But as he's doing that, he's becoming a little bit more mentally unstable, and that's where we get that piece with Darren Cross in the movie.
Okay.
And I think that's what they're calling back. But you don't see, like in the comics, you see him experimenting. You don't see the experiment go wrong for Corey Stall.
Darren Cross in the movie is just killing lambs. If you didn't think he was the bad guy, he was when he killed that lamb.
Yeah. Right. And this is really why we've avoided him thus far. And I think it was for good things. He gets violent. Just through his whole life span, he's this, I think he's always felt like he wasn't good enough.
Right.
And so he gets violent and aggressive. He hits Janet,
in
his wife.
Yeah, I got you.
In a famous scene. She divorces him. And then you have in the Ultimates comics, which we've talked about, which are a little bit more grittier, him and Janet get into a big fight. And because in those comics, Janet is a mutant. She's a mutant that looks like a wasp. She has the wings and everything. And
so she's not just somebody like Ant-Man who puts a suit on.
Right.
Oh, okay.
He sprays bug spray at her.
Nice.
After they get into a fight, and then he sixes ants on her.
Nice.
And so, he's terrible.
I understand what you're saying, but my question is, you ignore everything else in the comics half the time. Just say we're not going to do that. Like
they've done.
Yeah, I don't understand what the hesitation with not bringing Pym on because of that storyline. Where you're just like, yeah, we're clearly not going to do that. But
well, I think making the focus towards Scott Lang.
In the movie,
in the movie, more than Hank Pym.
Regard,
I mean, they didn't do Iron Man becoming an alcoholic in Iron Man 2,
right?
Which is
they kind of shied away from that.
They did,
yeah.
And so they weren't going to do Hank Pym beats his wife.
No, of course
not. Disney
not.
Movie. But that's part of his history. And I think in the culture we're at, if you're about to premiere a movie, even if he doesn't do it in the movie, you still have to answer questions about it.
You just say we obviously weren't going to do that because we don't want to do that. That's not what the movie's about. Move on. But here's the other thing. He's not timid in this movie. Like Michael Douglas is not timid. So he is headstrong. He is stubborn. And I know he's supposed to be the reason why he's like that is because he lost his wife and he's been trying to find her because she's in the microverse. He still kind of has some of those traits.
He does.
He's not the timid one that you're talking about.
No.
Yeah.
And like later on, his personality becomes a little less like, oh, my projects weren't good enough. Like he was always tinkering away and building stuff to be accepted.
Right.
And that's part of that Yellow Jacket identity, which is him being a little bit more like sure of himself. He actually hid who he was to the Avengers initially. Janet realized who he was because she was married to the guy, but he hid who he was, so they didn't like think of him as just, oh, there's Hank Pym. There's
right,
Hank.
right.
So he tried to hide who he was when he was Yellow Jacket. And then we have Scott. Scott was actually introduced much earlier than I thought he was. He came in the comics in the 70s. I thought he was more of a 90s character. I just missed it. But what they do in the movie is they keep a lot of his background the same. He turned burglary. He thought his engineering job was boring, so he stole from his employer.
Did he do it in the comics the way they describe in the movie, where he did it because he got let go, or it was like a millionaire?
No, but just because he was bored.
Okay,
because he was, so it wasn't totally as
he wasn't like a quote unquote a good guy, like
he wasn't like that chaotic good type of
like a Robin Hood type character. Yeah.
So he goes to prison. He turns things around. He does eventually get a job at Stark Industries.
Shocker! Everyone gets a job there.
And this is when Tony brings him and hires him to do security at Avengers Mansion. Tony hires a burglar to do security at Avengers Mansion.
So I just want to backtrack because the movie takes place in San Francisco.
Yes.
All this stuff is in New York, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, all right, go ahead. All right.
So same thing, in the comics he's divorced. He actually has custody of Cassie in the comics though. And this is where the movie kind of differs. In this one, he's trying to make a living, get himself back on his feet so that he could see his daughter. In that one, she has a heart condition and becomes sick. So he breaks into Hank Pym's house to steal an Ant-Man suit so that he can then go rescue the doctor who was kidnapped by Darren Cross, who could help his daughter. So, pieces of it, I think they just kind of streamlined and made his motivation a little easier so that they could bring in more of the Hank and Hope stuff.
Okay. Now that you've said Hope.
Yes.
She's a baddie in the
she's a villainous.
She's a villainous. There we go.
There's an alternate universe, as there always is.
Kind of loud.
This is Marvel Comics 2 or MC2, and it's a kind of alternate timeline.
Is this recent?
It came out in the late 90s, I think.
So no. Okay.
And so this MC2 universe has characters like Spider-Girl, who's the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane. There's a female Captain America, American Dream, and then a teenage Juggernaut. And so they're like the Avengers of that time period.
Okay. Juggernaut's from X-Men, right?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Hope was in that universe, still daughter of Hank and Janet. And I think there's a Hank Jr. too. That's her brother. He has growth powers as well, but she is the villainous Red Queen. So she's got similar like kind of Wasp-esque powers.
Okay.
And that's it. So they take that name, and then the other piece of it, and this kind of came out after the fact, is so this is another one where they just take a name of a character and reestablish it for how they want it to work in the movie.
Okay.
And then the other piece is Nadia Van Dyne,
right?
Who is a character that came out after this. She's the daughter of Hank and his first wife, a Russian scientist.
Now, is the first wife something that's new to that, or has it always been there?
It always was kind of there.
Okay.
Yeah. The daughter wasn't, though. The daughter they brought in later, just I think to add a little bit more diversity to their character roster, and they saw the popularity of the movie, or hoped for the popularity of the movie, and brought a character in. So her name was Nadia. She was raised in the Red Room, which is that Russian Soviet assassin room that Black Widow was trained in. That we may or may not get an Easter egg to this girl in the Black Widow movie.
Oh, maybe.
We may or may not get the Black Widow movie
on VOD, Disney Plus.
Yeah. So Janet was around at that time, and Janet gave her a lot of confidence and told her you should pursue this life as a hero. So that's why she took the name Van Dyne. She's not related to Janet, but she took that name. So they took pieces of both, and they kind of made their own character too in the Evangeline Lilly's character.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, she's more in the second one. I mean,
right.
This movie is more about her relationship with her father, and then obviously they have the tag at the end, which we can get to later. You can't really talk about Ant-Man without talking about DC's Atom.
Yes.
So if you can do it quickly, what are the differences? What are the similarities? Like maybe when one came out before the other, because I have no idea.
Yeah. So I mean, I think we've talked about this before. Comics steal from each other.
Of course.
DC had the Justice League, so Marvel wanted to do something, and that's where the Fantastic Four came about. And then later they did the Avengers. DC has Atom. Anybody familiar with the Arrowverse, played by Brandon Roth? He does the same thing. He can shrink down to microscopic sizes. Atom's power comes from the white. He harnesses a white dwarf star somehow that had crashed Earth.
Somehow.
Not a big Atom guy.
You don't like him? Is that pun intended?
Yeah. Done. Thank you for listening. That's the end of the show.
That was quick.
Yeah, so there was a character named Atom that kind of showed up in 1941. It wasn't the Ray Palmer character that Brandon Roth plays. Ray Palmer showed up as part of this, like, the Silver Age of comics, which is, brought by DC, and then Marvel was there. It focuses on like a lot more hard sci-fi. So there's a little bit more grounding in reality. The characters are going off into space adventures. It really ties into the space age that we see in the 60s.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, now he's harnessed his power. He can shrink. There's still the legacy characters of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, but the Silver Age has Atom and Green Lantern, characters who are a little bit more tied into sci-fi and fantasy. And then on the other side, you have Marvel, who was doing similar things, that everybody was, Tony was an inventor, Hank Pym's an inventor and a creator, Spider-Man's building his web shooters. So there was a little bit more of that, hard sci-fi in this
I prefer
age.
my Spider-Man to have them, actually.
We'll get there.
I just like that. Sorry.
They're kind of the same thing. A lot of people have worn the Atom name. A lot of people have worn the Ant-Man name.
So they can shrink. They can basically
shrink.
That's it.
Yeah. I think Atom can shrink further without going into like
there's no
realm
fear of the quantum realm or microverse
No.
or whatever it is.
No.
There's no fear of that with Atom. He can just do it and come
he
back.
He can just do it. And usually he'll be used because he is a scientist, he'll be used to help with diseases or something going on.
He'll go into people's bodies. Ew.
There's anybody who watched the old Justice League of America and Justice League Unlimited cartoon, he did things like that in multiple episodes where he went in. But
did he wore a suit and stuff, right?
Yeah, he just shrunk down, but he had a whole like body suit on.
Nice.
But he never beat his wife. Though the comparison is that
good for you, guy.
They both did get divorced from their wife.
Well, that happens.
Yeah.
Are they always compared to each other? Like in the comics, are they always like compare and contrast for people?
I don't know how many people like Atom that much anymore. Like there's been a couple, and this is the problem with both characters. They've had a hard time gaining traction.
Both of them in the comics, really?
I think Scott Lang as Ant-Man has gained the most traction for the longest time.
Sure.
Atom kind of went away for a little bit. They turned him into a teenager for a while. Then he turned back into adult, like just trying to make the guy interesting.
Okay.
They've had difficulties with both.
Okay. Yeah. When you have another character that basically can do the same thing.
Right. You got, in Marvel, you have Mr. Fantastic who can stretch. In DC, you have the elongated man or plastic man can do the same thing. Hawkeye and Green Arrow, Thanos and Darkseid, Swamp Thing and Man Thing.
Oh, Man-Thing.
Reference to Man-Thing.
Man-Thing. I missed this reference, so maybe we can talk about Sasquatch. Alpha Flight, right?
Another member of Alpha Flight.
I missed the reference in the movie, though.
I missed the reference, too. Yeah. Where did you find this?
I don't know. I just read
online?
Reference to... Maybe it was a poster or something. Because I know there's a poster for the drink that they're making in The Incredible Hulk, the factory that he works at. There's a poster for that soda somewhere in the movie as well.
Sasquatch. He's a scientist who can transform into a giant furry creature. AKA like a big Sasquatch guy. And yes, he was a member of Alpha Flight.
Oh,
that's all I'm going to give you because that's really all there is on it. The other one that you threw out there, and I want to make sure we hit on in this one, is Stature.
Okay, that's his daughter.
That's his daughter. One, this actress is great. The little girl. Yeah.
She's good.
Yeah. I don't like I get a little disappointed when they fast forward 5 years in Endgame and she's all grown up.
Yeah.
Which she's much older than 5 years from that. Or whatever. So for years, like I said, Scott had custody of her.
Yep.
After he they fixed her heart issue, she started tagging along with him on various, like when he was hanging out at the Fantastic Four headquarters or with the Avengers, like just hanging out in the mansion, doing things, whether it's fixing the security or because he is an electrical engineer by trade.
Good thing you said that.
Yes.
Because they never say that in the movie. They just have him always tinkering.
I think it was supposed to be implied by whatever company he was working for, but it doesn't work. agreed it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I don't remember because they never mention anything like he's an electrical engineer on his resume when he's applying for Baskin. You know, when the guy comes and he's like, "Oh man, it's hard to get a job as an ex-con."
Yeah.
He doesn't say I'm an electrical engineer and here I am at Baskin Robbins. Like supposed, I think it's all implied that he's much smarter than he is.
Yeah.
Or that, he needs to be for
Yeah, maybe he should have been
doing
like
high
fixing the machine.
right. Doing a high school job.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so Cassie, during these years hanging around with Scott, she would kind of steal some Pym particles. And that gave her the ability to, once she got angry, grow in size.
Mm-hmm.
And she learned to control it and kind of just do it at will.
So she would take the Pym particles,
Yes.
like not like in a suit.
Yeah.
What the hell is a Pym particle? How about that? How do you make that? How does he make that?
I don't know how he makes it.
I'm the only one that knows how to make it, but I'm not going to tell you.
Yes.
Okay. Carry on.
No, just wrap up. She was a member of the Young Avengers. So there was a group that features Kate Bishop, who's another version of Hawkeye, and a couple other like Patriot, who was a younger kid that looks like a Captain America sidekick. There was an Iron Lad. There was
Iron Lad.
We're not going to go into it unless they make it up. They've been talking about making a Young Avengers show, and that's floated around there.
Iron Lad.
Unless we get the Young Avengers show, we're not going to go into Iron Lad. But yeah, so that's who she is. I think they set her up with the new version of her in Endgame to perhaps be a stature. So maybe we'll see her in the third Ant-Man.
What is the third Ant-Man going to be? Well, you know what?
I don't know. We haven't even watched the second one yet.
Are we done with the comic stuff? Because I got nothing else. Half my notes you made me save for the second one, so that's fine.
No, Yellow Jacket. You want to talk Yellow Jacket?
Let's talk Yellow Jacket. Because then I want to get into this movie within the universe.
Yes.
We could talk about the next movie.
So there's been two other characters aside from Hank Pym that have worn the Yellow Jacket name suit. One being a villainess from the 80s. She was there for a hot second, and then she went off and joined the 31st Century Guardians of the Galaxies.
All right.
Remember them?
No.
Yes, we talked about that.
With yeah.
Like kind of gladiator Yondu.
Okay.
It doesn't look like Michael Rooker at all. And then you had Darren Cross, who was the billionaire inventor, owner of a tech company, yada, yada, yada. What we see in the movies.
Was Darren Cross always taking over Pym Tech? Was that always
No, he had his own kind of cross.
So he was like Justin Hammer.
Cross
type,
international
kind of
or something. Yeah. But always kind of a villain for Scott Lang.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was the one that kidnapped the woman, the doctor that could save Cassie. Scott had to go get him back. But he doesn't become Yellow Jacket until after this movie comes out.
Oh, okay.
And so he, this is one of those, like they took some characters. He was a villain. He was a corporate guy that Scott Lang had fought against. And they're like, well, let's turn him into something else and probably plan for some comic stories going forward.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I got.
That's it. That's Yellow Jacket.
That's Yellow Jacket. And then just, costume wise, because we'll see in Endgame, we see his big helmet that he has. That's more traditional to the old Ant-Man costume. In this one, it is kind of very much like the Scott Lang Ant-Man costume that he wears, like a diver suit type of thing. And then the Yellow Jacket costume, nowhere near what Hank Pym would wear.
They added those little things that come off in the end.
The
shooting lasers.
Laser things. So it was a little bit like it was a combo of a later version of a male Wasp costume that Hank Pym had worn. When they do introduce the character in the comics as Yellow Jacket, he wears this suit.
Okay.
That we see in the movie.
All right.
So, and then from a Wasp perspective, we see Ant-Man and Wasp on that nuclear bomb. They're both wearing red.
Right.
That's kind of their original color costumes. Later on, Wasp transforms into it's almost like an all black bodysuit with yellow markings on the front of her. And then there's some later versions from various future storylines and alternate universe storylines that they kind of piece together.
Well, I have that so the tag at the end has Hank showing his daughter the Wasp prototype suit that he was building.
Yes.
for his wife at the time, and he's like, let's finish it. And she's like, about damn time. And, everyone's like, yeah, cheering in the theaters. I'm sure you were. So the new Wasp suit is a prototype is an amalgamation of the Wasp suit from Avengers Forever, which you have no idea what that's about. Obviously, I'm going to guess, right? You don't know what that is?
Right.
All right. And then Secret Avengers.
Secret Avengers 1, her outfit's a little bit more tech-based, so that's what we see here. Like, it's a little bit more less bodysuit and more like tech, like Iron Man type tech.
Okay.
But slim down.
Right. Okay. So with that, let's transition. Let's transition to this movie in the MCU, and let's start with that tag. Was the intention always, you think, to have Wasp in the second one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you were always going to have that tag. Even, she wanted to be Ant-Man, or she wanted to put the suit on. You were always going to have that tag. But then there's two tags in this because you have a tag that
teases very well the next movie in this series.
But all I'm thinking is, when did they do this? Like, were they shooting the other movie while they were shooting Ant-Man?
Probably.
And the tag I'm talking about is Falcon and Captain America are with Bucky. I got to tell you, I can't even remember where this scene is in the movie.
It is because it's almost a scene pulled directly from
Civil War.
Civil War. So it's the scene when Cap pulls the helicopter that goes into the water, and then eventually they get Bucky, and it's right before the airport scene.
Okay.
And in it, they want to see, does Bucky know who he is? And he says, yeah, your mom's name was so and so. You used to wear newspapers in your shoes. That's this scene.
And when he says, "I know a guy," is he referring to Ant-Man?
He's referring to Ant-Man.
Well, I can't even remember I can't even remember how Ant-Man comes into. Like, I don't even remember.
Just is on the team.
Okay.
Like, he doesn't help with getting Bucky out of the whatever thing he's in.
Ant-Man's big thing in Civil War is that he can be Giant Man.
Yes.
I mean, that's the whole thing.
Yeah. And he gets arrested, and it sets up his house arrest for Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah.
I don't like that tag. I like the Wasp tag. I think leaving with just the Wasp tag.
It's fine. I don't understand why we need to have
like,
this. Ant-Man will return in the Avengers. No, or in Civil War. No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. Maybe they thought people would be like, I don't understand if they didn't have that scene with Cap and Bucky and Falcon. But it doesn't, you're right. It just doesn't, like, I watched it. I knew it was in there. I skipped it. Like, I watched the Wasp scene and I just turned it off because I knew it was there.
See, I didn't know. I was like, I'm going to go to the end because I know at some point they started doing mids and ends.
Yes.
And usually the end is like just kind of like a throwaway, like something either funny or. But that tag and the Falcon scene when he goes to the Avengers, whatever it's called, the store. Yeah. That's it, right? That's pretty much kind of it
for connections.
Well, I guess overt connections.
Overt connections. There's a lot more subtle connections,
right? Which we could talk about. But that's it for the big ones. Because I know that Pym always makes the comment about Sokovia.
Yep.
That's that's one of my favorite moments when Paul Rudd's like, okay, first off, let's just call the Avengers.
They're too busy.
Because that's what I would be like. Listen, let's just call them. Why are we doing this?
He's the only character in the MCU that has said, let's just call the Avengers.
Yeah. He's like when he is even in when Scott Lang carries over into Infinity War and Endgame and even Civil War, he is along the lines of almost like a little bit like Spider-Man, where he's like a fan. Yeah. Like he just like, it's cool to be a member. Yep. I'm just happy to be here kind of guy. Yeah.
He's like, hey, in the next movie we'll see him. He's like, hey, Mr. Captain America, Mr. Captain.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm a big fan. And like it's great acting.
Yeah.
But it's a really good moment.
In comparison, his happy to be here moments are more genuine and don't annoy me as much as the Peter Parker happy to be here moments in those, because it's always like, hey, and then
hey, Mr. Stark.
I don't want to harp on Spider-Man because we'll get to him, but they do really hard to make him like the best of all of them. Like he is the next one. Like almost like the
next one. It's like, no, let's just hang out with Scott.
Yeah. Like Scott's more interesting.
Yeah, he is.
But he is more like you could have a beer with Scott. You can't have a beer with Peter Parker, so young, but you could have a beer with Scott. You know what I mean? So in terms
this podcast is brought to you by underage drinking.
I said no. but he carries over where the same idea we talked about with Hawkeye. So
he's
I will
the everyman guy.
Even though I just spent the last 20, 30, 40 minutes talking about how I was just kind of like, I don't know about how I feel about Ant-Man. the Scott Lang character is somebody who is more relatable, just like Hawkeye.
Yes.
Yeah. But what are the other little moments in this movie that?
Well, I think we got the Sokovia one.
Right.
We never, because we see Ant-Man's side with Captain America in the next film.
Right.
As part of Civil War. We never get to see any resolution. Like there's no Tony Pym showdown. There's no kind of Stark Pym, but
there's never any Stark Pym.
No,
right?
there's never any Stark Pym. Like Pym shows up to the funeral, but you never get any like.
Which I think is a lost moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know the fight was between Pym and Howard Stark, but a lot of that carries over. And this is a movie about legacies, and there's a lot of that. Obviously, we have the opening scene with Howard and Peggy.
Right.
And it establishes S.H.I.E.L.D. as existing from World War II all the way through, into the 80s, which I think was a great piece by them to use this period that is untouched, essentially. I've said for a while, I'd love to see the Fantastic Four in the 60s, as part of S.H.I.E.L.D. or some offset of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something where you can have Howard Stark either as Dominic Cooper or John Slattery, have Haley Atwell,
just want to see Haley Atwell.
Yeah, I do. Working with them, but find these moments of the MCU that is untouched. And I like that with the 80s, but the problem with that is, and it's also the problem with Captain Marvel, is S.H.I.E.L.D's established, but when we go back and watch Iron Man 1, it looks like they're just forming S.H.I.E.L.D. And they're just like, strategic homeland, intervention, enforcement, logistics division. We're working on we're working on something shorter.
You're right.
And so that's something, as long as you can forget that moment in Iron Man 1.
I can't though.
Yeah. It's such a big piece with introducing Coulson. And so it's, it plays a little weird here and in Captain Marvel, which is in the 90s. So it doesn't quite work unless you could see it in the bubble. And then the other piece, and we kind of touched on this, was Cross was selling the Yellow Jacket to Hydra. The guy was from Hydra.
He was representing Hydra.
But he was also representing, and I didn't know this, and I didn't catch this from the movie. I got this when I was looking it up. The 10 Rings terrorist organization, which is the group that Tony may or may not have fought in the early parts of Iron Man, and is the organization that the real Mandarin is a part of.
So there's a real Mandarin now. Is that what we're saying?
Well, they said that they kind of, I know we talked about the Hail to the King short film.
Right.
That, there is a real Mandarin out there. And, we're supposed to touch on the 10 Rings in Shang-Chi, which is going to come out whenever. So it was a weird reference that I think, one, there wasn't enough of it, but also is never followed up on. Like, are you going to follow up on that in 7 years, 8 years?
So this is after this is after Winter Soldier.
This is after Winter Soldier.
Mitchell Carson, we're going to assume
the
now
last Hydra guy
was with Hydra.
Yeah.
And now he's with Hydra and they're buying the cross particle, whatever they're calling it, for them. And he takes it because that's supposed to be what he's taking it to Hydra.
Yes.
And they use it, right?
Yeah.
When did they use it later on?
I don't think they ever use it again.
Okay,
we never see these characters again.
Now, because you brought up Shang-Chi, I should have brought this up when we were talking about the movie itself. So I talked about the writers.
Mm-hmm.
You had Edgar Wright, Joe Cornish, Adam McKay, Paul Rudd, but you also had Andrew Bearer and Gabriel Ferrari.
Okay,
were uncredited on this movie. They go on to write Ant-Man and Wasp, and you had David Callahan, who's the writer for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Yep. Okay.
But he also wrote Wonder Woman 1984, which is coming out.
Yeah.
But so you had more than 4. You had 7. But I'm wondering if the Ten Rings connection is in there because of Callahan.
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if he knew that he was going to be writing Shang-Chi then, but it could have. I didn't catch like you didn't catch the
tattoo you're talking. They had the neck tattoo. That's what they're saying. There's a neck tattoo on there that's supposed to be the 10. I read it and I was just like, okay. There's when I go through the facts,
there's small Easter eggs.
There's stuff that I'm just like, I don't care. Like my favorite, not to get off topic, my favorite stuff, my favorite facts. And when I say favorite, I mean they're not. There's a huge pet peeve is when they tell you Paul Rudd is in this movie with Michael Douglas. Michael Douglas was in this other movie with Keira Sedgwick, who was also in this other movie with Paul Rudd. Like there's like these weirdo, like, yes, we get it. They're actors. They play different roles. I understand. I don't need to know this. They were a father figure in this movie. Who cares?
I don't need
Who cares?
6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, that's stupid. I hate those. But anyways, that's a rant.
Okay. So that makes a little bit more sense. So it probably was just an Easter egg and maybe potentially a teaser for something in the future.
I think that kind of like wrapping up a little.
Yeah.
I think there's kind of a missed opportunity with having Pym come in the 12th movie. You don't ever have him. I mean, maybe because it's how are we supposed to do it, Mike? Like that kind of thing. Like how are we supposed to put him in there? And I like your idea of going back to the 60s with Fantastic Four because I think that's the only way to kind of bring a fresh new Marvel movie.
Yeah.
I know because you're eventually going to, and they're going to want to, unless Disney loses all their money and they got to sell everything, which is a possibility. They're going to do these movies, and you've already seen 2 Fantastic Fours that I don't care if you like some of the stuff. They're not good. They're not.
No,
good.
they're pieces of the original, the Chris Evans Fantastic Four that are good. The Josh Trank Fantastic Four is absolute garbage.
Yeah, it's not great. And they're both were in the present, so why not go back? I mean, I know the thing with Captain Marvel in the 90s is it's so aware that it's in the 90s.
Yeah. And then going to the blockbuster, like it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like that was just an everyday. They were on every block.
Yeah, I know. It's like you should make the blockbuster look run down. Like it should look like, but regardless.
We'll get there on Captain Marvel. But
it shouldn't be so self-referential. So just put it in the 60s or put it wherever you want to, but put it in the past. It's a fresh look. It's something new. You don't have to worry about everyone else in the universe and where they are. You can have an idea, but you don't have to reference it.
No.
And then if you ever want to, because I know eventually you're going to want to pull them into the future at some point. You can end that run wherever the 3 movies where
they get trapped in a time realm or in the quantum realm or something.
Do something like that.
Exactly. The DC has a great book out there. Darwin Cook wrote The New Frontier, and it places the characters through like history up into JFK's time period, up and through the Cuban Missile Crisis, essentially. And it's not self-referential to, oh man, look at this thing. It was so cool in the 60s. It was like Cuba's still like, no, don't
like. I like stuff in like time periods.
Set it in the time period.
I love that, but
don't overly reference the time period.
Don't make our characters aware of it, and don't make your filmmakers put so much in there that it's so aware that we're in this time.
Having an actual period piece movie. Yeah. Have them be part of the space race, and that's your hook right there. Then they get caught up in their Fantastic Four stuff. But they could be part of the SHIELD space program.
Sure.
Boom. There you go.
Yeah.
Marvel, Disney, take it, run with it. If you're listening to this, we hope you are.
See, I wonder if just to bring it back, because we're talking about Ant-Man.
Yeah, we are.
Just to bring it back to Ant-Man, I wonder if this would have been a good thing to do in the past. I wonder if
completely tell the Hank Pym story.
Oh, well, you could still. I mean, I know Scott Lang came. What'd you say? Came in the 70s,
late 70s,
70s. I don't know. Why not put that? Why not just put the Scott Lang stuff? You could do the same kind of formula.
Yeah.
Put it in the early 70s and just have it be, like not everyone, because then the technology's not there. That's his tech is the only tech.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and then you don't have to worry about, let's call the Avengers or tying it to that. At the end of the Ant-Man's run, he is trapped in the microverse and you don't ever see him until whenever you want to bring him back.
Right.
Or the quantum realm, excuse me.
Like just same thing. Quantum realm.
I mean, I don't know if those discussions were ever brought up. I think it's at this point, you are on a roll with all your movies and you're just like, let's go Ant-Man. Let's go this. Let's throw that. We're going to Civil War. I'm like, you're not thinking. You're just boom, 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 cranking them out. I don't know. I think maybe that would have been a little bit more interesting. And I'm all for world building. I'm all for building the universe. You know that. Yep. Half the stuff I write's all that. There's something to be said for just standalone stories that are, while they're in that world verse or in that universe, you can pluck them right out and they can be their own thing.
Yes.
And that's what makes the original Star Wars trilogy great.
Yep.
It what makes the other ones not so great.
Yep.
But you know what I mean?
And it's what made Iron Man great to start, but now that they start complicating the timeline, then you start thinking about it.
The first Iron Man is a perfect example of that, obviously, because it's the first. But then we've already talked about how Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3 are just littered with
references
to everything else. See, the only movie I think in the back of my mind, the only movie that doesn't do that is Black Panther. And honestly,
Guardians. A lot of Guardians.
Well, the first one.
The first one.
Yeah. Black Panther is the one moving forward that is its own movie.
Yes.
It has the tag with Bucky at the end, but it has nothing to do with anything.
If you take the tag out of that, then it's a
complete story.
It's a complete story.
You can believe it's within its own universe, and that is why Black Panther is so successful. And it's a well told story, and so that's the only one I can think of. Captain Marvel could have done that. But Captain Marvel is littered with MCU stuff.
It's too many connections to make us feel like we
Right.
need to like this character.
Right.
And
And to Ant-Man's credit, it's not really littered with it. Like
They're
there's other
subtle.
stuff.
They're subtle.
But I think you have to. But you're calling the character arc of Hank Pym, which has been within the comics for decades.
60 years.
Yeah, and you've never referenced in the first 11 movies, and now we're going to put it in this movie. So it kind of has to. It becomes that, which is fine.
Yeah,
and I like that, and I think it works.
As we wrap up phase 2, thanks again, everybody that listened.
Oh man, do I have to do my rate?
Yeah, you got to do your ranking.
Uh-oh.
You want me to go first?
Well, go first because I have to actually find the movies.
Find the movies. All right. I go first. First, Captain America Winter Soldier. Love that movie. Next up is Ant-Man. Really love it as a character piece. Then Guardians, Iron Man 3, Age of Ultron, and then finally Thor the Dark World.
No, not Thor's the end.
Yeah. What do you have as the end?
I have to look, dude.
You want him?
You're all. No, I got it. I'm going to the thing. You're all prepared.
We're making content for the Instagrams. We'll put this up on the Instagram site.
All right, phase 2. Here we go. Here we go. So you said Ant-Man. No, I'm sorry. You said
Winter Soldier,
Ant-Man,
Guardians, Iron Man 3, Ultron, then Thor.
Well, definitely Thor's at the bottom.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, you know what? I'll say Winter Soldier. I like Captain America stuff, so Captain America, Winter Soldier number 1. So I agree there with you. But I'm not gonna say Ant-Man number 2.
I don't think so.
No way. I'll say Guardians number 2.
Yep.
Guardians.
Then it gets tricky.
I'm really just looking at Iron Man or Ant-Man here. I don't know. Do I like Iron Man 3 that much? You know what? I'll say Iron Man 3.
Okay.
Just because it's the finale. It's the end of the Iron Man trilogy. So I'm going Captain America Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Iron Man 3, Ant-Man, Avengers Age of Ultron, and Thor the Dark World. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not such a list of these are so good. This is more of a list of this is bad. This is not as good as this one. It's a bottom up list.
Yeah, I think like after Captain America, for me, there's a big gap.
Yes.
And then after Guardians of the Galaxy, there's also a big gap.
Right.
Like, I really do enjoy Iron Man 3, but there's a lot of problems.
Yeah, the bottom 4 are all problematic.
Yeah.
All problematic. And it's almost like, okay, do I like that worse than that one?
Yeah.
And that's
how it, especially with Thor and Ultron, they just didn't work. I mean, there's a huge gap between Iron Man 3 and then Ultron and Thor.
Thor the Dark World is just boring.
It is.
It's just boring. And anyways, it's just boring.
We leave this up to you, dear listeners. We'll post this online. Let us know which ones you like and how you'd rank them.
Yeah, these are all obviously our opinions. So, So phase 2 has ended. Next week, we're not going to be going right to phase 3, part 1. We actually, we break up phase 3 because there's 11 movies? 11 movies in phase 3. So we're going to break those up into parts. But until then, I'm going to leave you now because Pat has some recommended reading. I'm sure you love those videos that we do with Pat. So he's going to give you some recommended reading for Ant-Man. And I will see you next week for our bonus phase.
As always, at the end of each episode, we like to send you home with some recommended reading that follows up on some of the characters and plots presented in this week's film. Our recommended reading section is sponsored by Infinite Heroes, comics, cards, and collectibles in Watertown, Connecticut. If you're in the Connecticut or New England area, it's a great location to pick up comics from Marvel, as well as DC, Image, and more. They also have a large collection of trading cards, toys, and collectibles. Owner Paul Santos has worked in comics for years, most recently as an editor at DC Comics. Ask him for a recommendation and tell him we sent you. So let's talk Ant-Man recommended reading. First up, the Ant-Man movie races through multiple time periods of the Marvel Universe, and we're going to do the same here. Starting with the Ant-Man Giant Man Complete Collection, which collects the early days and Tales to Astonish number 27, and 35 through 59, Adventure with Hank, Pym, and Janet Van Dyne as they explore microscopic universes and worlds and adventures, and Hank switches things up and becomes the biggest Avenger of all time. Number 2, Ant-Man Season 1, Astonishing Origins. Writer Tom DeFalco and artist Horatio Dominguez take another look at Hank's early days, how he invented his technology and became the superhero Ant-Man. It also serves as a great transition into Scott Lang assuming the identity of the pint-sized powerhouse. And finally, let's go all in on Scott Lang's hero and Astonishing Ant-Man Complete Collection by Nick Spencer. Read to see how Scott goes from ex-con to superhero, faces down his arch nemesis, Darren Cross. Thanks for reading. Check us out on Instagram, and we'll see you next week.